In March 1909, some of Britain's largest chocolate makers announced that they would no longer buy cocoa from the Portuguese islands of São Tomé and Príncipe. The beans arriving from those tropical plantations helped feed a rapidly growing market for affordable chocolate. But reports described a labor system so coercive that investigators compared it to slavery. The scandal was not new. Cadbury brothers had heard disturbing allegations as early as 1901. Investigations followed, promises of reform were made, negotiations continued, and for years, cocoa from the same islands continued to enter British factories. Cadbury was not an ordinary company. Its Quaker owners had built their public reputation around worker welfare, moral reform, and social responsibility. Yet the cocoa feeding their factories came from plantations accused of preserving slavery under another name. The disturbing part was not simply that a beloved product had been connected to brutal work. It was that the warnings had been circulating for years. So why did it take so long to stop? And why, more than a century later, is the same question still hanging over the chocolate aisle? By 1909, chocolate was becoming one of the modern world's great consumer products. Machines had transformed it from an expensive drink into a smooth, portable bar. Demand was rising. Factories needed more cocoa, at lower cost, delivered on reliable schedules. And somewhere, far from the polished shops of London and Birmingham, someone had to absorb the pressure. That pattern did not begin in São Tomé. It had been building for thousands of years. To understand chocolate, we have to follow more than a recipe. We have to follow the movement of power from forest communities to royal courts, from colonial plantations to industrial factories, and from modern supermarkets back to the farms that still supply the world today. Because the history of chocolate is not only the story of how people learned to make something bitter taste sweet, it is the story of how the true cost of sweetness became easier and easier to hide. A chocolate bar looks simple: a wrapper, a few scored squares, a short list of ingredients that might include cocoa mass, cocoa butter, sugar, milk, and vanilla. But almost nothing about the system behind it is simple. Before sunrise, a cocoa farmer may already be walking beneath the trees, looking for ripe pods and signs of disease. The farmer must protect the trees, harvest the pods by hand, crack them open, remove the wet seeds, and carefully manage fermentation and drying. Before those seeds reach your hand as chocolate, they may pass through a local buyer, a cooperative, an exporter, a processor, a commodity trader, a manufacturer, and finally a retailer. At every stage, the product becomes more processed, more recognizable, and usually more valuable. Yet the finished bar is rarely branded with the name of the community where the cocoa grew. It carries the name of the company that blended, packaged, advertised, and sold it thousands of miles away. Today, most cocoa farmers work relatively small plots. Ivory Coast and Ghana together produce close to 60% of the world's cocoa, while many of the largest chocolate companies, processing centers, and consumer markets are located somewhere else. By the time cocoa becomes chocolate, the person who performs the earliest and riskiest work in the chain may be the least visible person on the wrapper. That imbalance may look modern, but the distance between those who grew cacao and those who controlled its value began much earlier. For generations, popular histories began the story of chocolate with the Olmec civilization of southern Mexico. That story is now incomplete. In 2018, researchers reported 3 independent forms of evidence from the Santa Ana La Florida archaeological site in present-day Ecuador. They found cacao starch grains, they found absorbed chemical residues, and they found ancient cacao DNA. Together, the evidence showed that people were using cacao there about 5,300 years ago. The site was associated with a culture known as the Mayo-Chin-Chi-Pay culture. This was more than 2,000 years before the famous Maya cities of the classic period. It does not mean that these early communities were eating chocolate bars. It does not even prove that they prepared the same cacao drink later known in Central America. the exact recipes remain unknown, but the discovery changes the map. The earliest secure archaeological evidence currently points toward the upper Amazon region, where cacao grew within a larger world of forest plants, river routes, ceramics, exchange, and human experimentation. Cacao did not move north along one simple and predictable road. It circulated between different communities across South America and Central America. People exchanged plants. They selected varieties. They adapted trees to new environments. And they built knowledge that could not have been learned in a single harvest. The object we now call chocolate did not begin as a European luxury. It did not begin as the invention of one famous king or one powerful empire. It began as indigenous knowledge accumulated across generations. People learned how to recognize the fruit. They learned how to manage the tree. They learned how to ferment and process its seeds. And they discovered how to transform a difficult and bitter tropical crop into something socially valuable. As cacao moved north, its meaning expanded. It became a drink. It became a gift. It became a symbol. It became a form of wealth. And eventually, it became a source of political power. In ancient Maya communities, cacao appeared in painted vessels, inscriptions, elite feasts, burials, marriage exchanges, and religious settings. The Maya word Cacao is recorded in hieroglyphic texts. Some ceramic vessels were even labeled for particular cacao preparations. The drink was not merely consumed. It was named, classified, presented, and displayed. Recipes varied between places and periods. Cacao could be mixed with water or maize, then flavored with chili, flowers, vanilla, like aromatics or other ingredients. The liquid could be poured between vessels to create a layer of foam. That foam carried sensory value, but it could also communicate skill, ceremony, and status. It would be misleading to claim that only rulers ever tasted cacao. Access differed across communities and changed over time. But decorated vessels, carefully prepared drinks, and high-quality cacao clearly carried social meaning. Later, the Mexica people, often called the Aztecs, built their imperial capital at Tenochtitlan. Their capital stood in a highland environment where cacao did not grow well. That made the crop even more politically important. Cacao arrived through trade and tribute from warmer regions under imperial control. It was stored, counted, exchanged, and consumed inside a system that linked distant growing communities to the political center of the empire. Cacao beans could also facilitate market exchanges, especially for smaller purchases. Larger quantities represented concentrated value. The empire did not need to grow cacao within the capital itself. It needed to control the routes and the communities that supplied it. This is one of chocolate's oldest recurring patterns. The people consuming the most valuable form of a product do not necessarily live where it grows. Power belongs to those who can organize, control, and profit from the distance between production and consumption. By the early 16th century, cacao was already part of an enormous commercial and political landscape. Then Spanish forces arrived. They formed alliances with indigenous enemies of the Mexica state, and together they helped destroy the empire centered on Tenochtitlan. The conquest did not create cacao's value. It inherited that value. Then it redirected it. Europeans did not discover an unknown plant and independently invent its use. They entered an existing cacao world. Indigenous farmers already knew how to cultivate the tree. Indigenous processes understood fermentation, roasting, grinding, flavoring, and foam. Indigenous merchants already moved cacao across long distances. Colonial power appropriated that knowledge and placed it inside a new commercial system. At first, many Europeans found cacao drinks unfamiliar. They could be bitter, spiced, thick, or textured in ways that did not match European expectations. But recipes changed. Sugar and cinnamon were increasingly added. Preparation methods changed. Drinking vessels changed. Chocolate entered colonial households. religious institutions, medical writing, and eventually the courts of Europe. This transformation is often described as a simple improvement. Europeans added sugar, and bitter chocolate became sweet. But sugar was not an innocent ingredient. By the 18th century, much of the sugar-feeding European demand came from plantations in the Caribbean and South America. Those plantations generated immense profits through the labor of millions of enslaved Africans and their descendants. Sweetened chocolate therefore brought together two commodities with different origins, but increasingly connected imperial histories. Cacao carried indigenous knowledge from the Americas. Sugar carried the violence of the Atlantic plantation system. The resulting drink could be presented in silver pots, served in aristocratic rooms, and praised as medicine, refinement, or luxury. Its elegance depended on distance. The consumer saw the cup. The consumer did not see the field. The consumer did not see the forced migration. And the consumer did not see the labor that made sweetness cheap enough to become fashionable. During the 17th century, chocolate moved through elite networks in Spain, Italy, France, England, and beyond. It was expensive. Cacao had to cross an ocean. Sugar carried its own cost. Preparation required roasting, grinding, mixing, and, often the work of skilled servants. Specialized pots, cups, and stirring tools became part of the performance. Chocolate was also surrounded by claims. Physicians debated whether it nourished the body, stimulated desire, aided digestion, or interfered with religious fasting. Merchants advertised it. Royal courts turned it into fashion. In London, chocolate houses joined coffee houses as gathering places for wealthy and politically connected men. They exchanged information. They gambled. They negotiated business. They formed alliances. This was not yet chocolate as an ordinary snack. It was chocolate as access. To drink it in the right place, from the right vessel, among the right people, was to participate in a world of status and influence. But elite markets have limits. There are only so many aristocrats. For chocolate to become a truly global commodity, manufacturers needed to change its physical form, lower its price, and create customers far beyond the royal court. That required a different kind of power. Not royal power, industrial power. Traditional chocolate contained a high proportion of cocoa butter. When cacao nibs were ground, they formed a dense and fatty paste. That paste worked well for drinks, but it was difficult to standardize for large-scale manufacturing. In 1828, a Dutch manufacturer named Koen Raat van Houten patented a cocoa press. The press helped separate much of the cocoa butter from the cocoa solids. The remaining cake could then be ground into cocoa powder. The full history is more complicated than the legend of one machine transforming chocolate overnight. But separating cocoa solids from cocoa butter changed what manufacturers could do. They could produce smoother drinks. They could control texture more precisely. And they could recombine cocoa butter, cocoa mass, and sugar into entirely new forms. In 1847, the British company J.S. Fry & Sons produced an important form of molded eating chocolate. The company is commonly credited with creating one of the first commercially successful modern chocolate bars. Chocolate could now be held. It could be divided, wrapped, transported, and eaten without a cup. Later 19th century developments produced milk chocolate and more refined conching techniques. Conching mixed and worked the chocolate mass, helping transform a coarse mixture into a smoother and more uniform product. These innovations did more than improve taste. They changed the economics of desire. A drink had to be prepared. A bar could sit beside a cash register. A drink belonged to a room. A bar could travel in a pocket, a lunchbox, a soldier's ration, or a child's hand. Factories expanded. Advertising expanded. Demand expanded. And as factories learned to produce chocolate faster, they also needed more cocoa than older supply systems could provide. By the late 19th century, European manufacturers needed increasingly large and reliable quantities of cocoa. One major source was the Portuguese-controlled islands of São Tomé and Príncipe, located in the Gulf of Guinea. The islands became known for enormous cocoa estates called rochas. Workers were recruited from Angola and other Portuguese territories under labor contracts that formally distinguished them from enslaved people. In practice, investigators and critics described coercion, violence, restricted movement, manipulated wages, and workers who were rarely returned home. São Tomé became one of the world's leading cocoa producers. British chocolate manufacturers bought heavily from the islands. This created a painful contradiction for Cadbury. The company's Quaker owners promoted temperance, worker welfare, and social reform. At Bourneville, near Birmingham, they built housing and facilities for employees. But the cocoa feeding those factories was linked to a labor system that critics described as slavery in everything but name. Reports reached Cadbury around 1901. The company opened correspondence with anti-slavery campaigners, missionaries, other manufacturers, and Portuguese officials. It eventually supported an investigation led by Joseph Burt. But investigations take time, negotiations take time, and during that time, cocoa continued to arrive. The company argued that it needed reliable evidence and wanted the Portuguese authorities to reform the system. Critics saw delay. Every additional year of investigation was also another year in which British factories received cocoa from the plantations under scrutiny. In March 1909, Cadbury, Fry, and Rowntree announced that they would stop purchasing cocoa from the Portuguese islands. The boycott mattered. It placed commercial pressure on the plantation system and contributed to the decline of São Tomé's dominance. But it was not a clean story of immediate moral awakening. The companies acted after years of warnings, public criticism, investigation, and the development of alternative supplies. Chocolate had encountered a labor scandal. The industry responded partly by changing where it bought cocoa. That was easier than changing the deeper economic demand for abundant and low-cost beans. One of the most important alternatives was the British colony of the Gold Coast, present-day Ghana. The rise of cocoa there did not simply reproduce the giant estate model of São Tomé. African farmers played a central role. They acquired planting material, cleared and cultivated land, organized family and migrant labor, responded to prices, and expanded production through networks that colonial planners did not fully control. By the early 20th century, the Gold Coast had become the world's leading cocoa producer. This was not a story of passive farmers waiting for Europeans to introduce a profitable crop. African producers helped create one of the most important agricultural transformations of the colonial era. But colonial infrastructure and global trade still shaped where the greatest value accumulated. Raw beans left through African ports. Much of the processing, finance, branding, and higher value manufacturing remained concentrated in Europe and North America. Over time, cocoa production expanded farther west into Ivory Coast and other regions. Today, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Ecuador are among the world's largest cocoa producers. Millions of farmers depend on the crop, and most operate relatively small farms. They face unstable weather, plant disease, aging trees, rising fertilizer costs, labor shortages, and prices they rarely control. Nearly every major agricultural risk remains on the farm. Yet farmers have limited influence over the price of the branded products sold to consumers. The modern cocoa economy did not erase farmer agency. It surrounded that agency with limits. As cocoa production expanded, chocolate companies learned to sell more than taste. They learned to sell meaning. Chocolate became romance on Valentine's Day. It became comfort during war. It became a childhood reward. It became a holiday tradition. And it became a small luxury that almost anyone could afford. In the United States, Milton Hershey developed mass production around a standardized milk chocolate bar. Other companies followed with filled bars, coated candies, and products designed for long shelf life and easy transport. During the Second World War, Hershey manufactured enormous quantities of military chocolate rations. Company archival estimates suggest that more than 3 billion Ration D units were produced between 1940 and 1945. The chocolate bar had become industrial food. It was compact, it was high in energy, it was durable, and it could be distributed to soldiers around the world. After the war, supermarkets, television advertising, refrigeration, modern packaging, and multinational distribution placed chocolate in more homes than any royal court could have imagined. The product became ordinary. That was the triumph of industrial chocolate. But ordinariness created a new pressure. Consumers came to expect the same taste, the same quality, and enormous quantities at a price low enough for impulse buying. Factories could improve efficiency. Retailers could compete. Brands could reduce package sizes or change recipes. Farmers could not manufacture more rain. They could not quickly replace a mature tree. And they could not move their farms when disease, heat, or unstable markets turned against them. The bar had become universal. The security of the people who grew its essential ingredient had not. In 2001, governments and major chocolate companies supported an agreement known as the Harkin-Engel Protocol. Its goal was to address the worst forms of child labor in cocoa production. The ambition was clear. The deadlines were not. Targets moved. Monitoring systems expanded. New programs were announced. But hazardous child labor did not disappear. Here, language matters. Not every task performed by a child on a family farm is automatically classified as illegal child labor. Age matters. Hours matter. School attendance matters. And the danger of the work matters. But many activities common in cocoa production are hazardous for children. These can include using sharp tools, carrying heavy loads, burning fields, and being exposed to agricultural chemicals. The United States Department of Labor currently reports that more than 1.5 million children work on cocoa farms in Ivory Coast and Ghana. More than 40% of them perform hazardous work. This problem cannot be explained by one evil company, one corrupt official, or one irresponsible family. It is connected to rural poverty, limited access to education, shortages of affordable adult labor, weak enforcement, low farm productivity, and supply chains that often struggle to trace cocoa back to individual farms. In November 2024, the governments of Ivory Coast and Ghana joined American labor officials and the cocoa industry in announcing another framework for action. The new plan emphasized education, social protection, traceability, farmer income, and stronger coordination. Those efforts may improve lives, but the existence of another plan reveals how far the industry remains from solving a problem it publicly promised to confront more than 2 decades earlier. The historical question remains: why does a product capable of generating enormous value still depend on farming communities where many households cannot reliably afford enough adult labor? The answer is uncomfortable. The industry has spent centuries becoming exceptionally efficient at delivering chocolate to consumers. It has been less successful at delivering security to the people who grow cocoa. Cocoa is a demanding tree. It thrives in humid tropical conditions with suitable rainfall, stable temperatures, healthy soil, and protection from harsh exposure. Its vulnerability is not only about climate change. Cocoa farms also face fungal disease, viral disease, pests, aging trees, degraded soil, and pressure on surrounding forests. Recent supply shocks have shown how quickly problems on distant farms can reach supermarket shelves. Heavy rain, flooding, heat, and crop disease contributed to severe production problems in West Africa. The 2023 to 2024 cocoa season ended with a global supply deficit of nearly 500,000 metric tons. During the following season, production recovered and the market moved into a small surplus. That rapid reversal reveals how unstable the system can be. Higher world prices do not automatically create prosperity for farmers. A farmer may have fewer beans to sell. Production costs may rise. Governments may regulate farm prices. Traders and manufacturers may protect themselves from price changes in ways that individual farmers cannot. And when world prices fall, farmers can face a different crisis before their trees have had time to respond. A temporary market surge does not repair roads. It does not rebuild schools. It does not replace aging trees. It does not solve land rights disputes. And it does not guarantee that farmers can finance the next harvest. Climate projections also require caution. Researchers agree that cocoa is sensitive to changing temperature and rainfall, but the effects will differ by region, soil, shade, farm design, and the resources available for adaptation. Agroforestry can help. Improved planting material can help. Better disease control, crop diversification, and stronger farmer organizations can also reduce risk. But adaptation costs money, and the farmers most exposed to environmental pressure are often the least able to pay for it. The future is not simply that chocolate will disappear. The more precise question is, who will be able to afford adaptation, and who will carry the loss when adaptation fails? A chocolate wrapper tells you many things. It tells you the percentage of cocoa. It tells you whether the bar contains milk or nuts. It may tell you where the company was founded. It may display a certification logo, a tasting note, or an image of a distant farm. What it rarely tells you is how power moved through the product. It does not show the indigenous communities that first learned what cacao could become. It does not show the empires that converted the crop into tribute and trade. It does not show the sugar plantations that changed its taste. It does not show the machines that turned an elite drink into a mass commodity. It does not show the workers of São Tomé, whose conditions forced chocolate companies to confront the meaning of their own moral claims. And it cannot summarize the millions of decisions being made today on cocoa farms across West Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Chocolate is not guilty. A cacao tree has no politics, but every system built around it does. The next time you break a chocolate bar into squares, notice how easily it divides. The history behind it does not divide so neatly. There is pleasure on one side. There is cost on the other. They have always been part of the same bar. This is everyday empires, the hidden histories behind everyday things. The next time you choose a chocolate bar, what will you look for on the wrapper? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us which everyday object we should investigate next. Subscribe for more stories about the ordinary products that reshaped trade, power, labor, and the modern world.